Hey everyone, Kumar Datatrain here with Agile Meridian, joined by my partners Jolly Rajan and Chris Daly. Unfortunately, Mike won't be able to make it today, but we're sure he's going to be leading our next call, hopefully. Today, we're going to be talking about the role of the product owner and delivering products that people actually care about. And so let's just go to our discussion. Let me change our format here so we're not all squished together like we were. And um, we're going to be talking about one of the competencies from the scrum.org um, list of competencies. There's 5 main competencies, and one of them is let me just display it here, developing and delivering products professionally. And in this competency are 3 main themes. One is emergent software development, one is managing technical risks, and optimizing flow. And I don't know, what do you think, Jolly, when you hear about the phrase emergent software development in terms of the role of a product owner?
Yeah. Just good that you added that at the end, Kumar, because when you say emergent software development, my mind immediately goes to emergent design, and that's my fault because that's primarily where I came from, my background as a developer a long time ago and whatnot. So I don't blame anyone if you think that way. And when Kumar, Chris, and I talked about this before, I had the same frame of mind, which is probably not the only way to approach it. So when we are talking about emergent software development within a delivery team, and if you are thinking about emergent design, the first question would be, how is the peer going to influence this at all? Right? I mean, they don't know what emergent design means. Even the delivery teams, most of them don't know what emergent design means, and much less being very good at it. So the way the PO can help, in my opinion, is to make sure that they give the delivery team enough to think about, not too much, just enough to think about, so that they can run those small iterations that deliver a product with the feedback that everyone can give. And that is where the PO can actually help. Now, that requires a whole lot of skill with the delivery team to kind of manage that kind of iterative development and slowly expanding the scope and discovery. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, that sounds great. How about you, Chris? What do you think the role of a product owner is in emergent design?
I think they're critical when you're trying to, build a new product or even a new feature, right? You want to try to get the best possible product you can. And, the product owner really owns that piece of breaking it down and identifying what that minimum viable product is, right? What are those first set of features or first set of functionality that we want to have, and then get it out there and let the team, go through and figure out how do we do that. So they're really important, and it's really important as well that they have an open mind, right? Most of us come in when we get thrown into a situation, we think about how we want things to work out, what we want to look like. And, with the product owner, it's really important that they go in with an idea, but yet they're not, completely married to the idea, right? They're not completely sold to it. They're willing to get input from others.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So for a product owner, it's creating the environment so that the team can learn how to embrace emergence, right? And so for that to happen, it's giving the team just enough, in terms of experiments that they can run with. And what does really emergence mean? Emergence means that as the team works on something, they're going to discover something. Things are going to emerge. They're going to learn something more about the product that they're building. That's going to guide future development. And so, from a product owner perspective, it's crafting features and user stories that are, features that are hypotheses. It's an idea. It's an experiment that gets broken down into user stories that deliver some need. Yeah. And so it's sort of balancing this idea of emergence with the need to deliver something of value that works. And I think product owners play a really critical role there in helping the team the development team embrace emergent software design and delivery.
One of the things that product owners probably want to be cognizant of, and this applies more to people who became product owners and have maybe an idea of how technology works or how delivery teams work. They tend to think about the whole just to cater to the fact that the design and delivery teams would benefit from it. Oh, when I was a developer, or when I did this first, when I worked with that team, they wanted to know everything so that they could design the perfect system right from the word go and include everything. And if they have that experience, if they have that in the back of their head, they tend to behave the same way again and again and again. So to break out of that mindset would require intentional actions from the product owner's part.
Yeah,
while taking the team into confidence.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do you guys see this as something we see in large organizations, or is emergent software development, is that really more of a startup, smaller company kind of thing?
I can say that in smaller companies, they tend to be emergent by necessity, not because they are intentionally going after that.
Yeah.
They are doing it just because they are trying to run while they are standing, right? They are trying to make the best efforts to get a product out there. So it just happens by accident, even though that's not intentional.
Yeah.
In big companies, it looks like there seems to be a lot of one way to play with. Money is allocated ahead of time for this entire project, and the effort is almost always focused on, hey, how do we control the scope and how do we manage this budget, rather than how do we build the best product.
Mm-hmm.
I think for companies that are established with established products that are maintained by a team or multiple teams, it's really about involving the team as much as possible in refinement of the backlog. Going into a sprint with a poorly refined backlog, that emergence may take over. There won't be that balance between emergence and delivery, right? Because so much is discovered in the sprint that not much gets delivered in the sprint, right?
Yeah.
The requirements aren't known.
Yeah.
And of course, then, that may be a product owner that's really trying to allow the team to, come to some understanding of the product, but more needs to be done to get the team sort of understanding what those experiments are, understanding what the stories are, what the value is that needs to be delivered. And so the refinement process may need to be more collaborative. That could be a pattern or a red flag to watch out for. It's like you get into the sprint and these stories aren't refined. The acceptance criteria aren't known. And so, you're doing a lot of emergence there, right? A lot of discovery.
Almost wholly emergent.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an anti-pattern you don't want to get into.
Right.
I'm wondering also if other patterns might be, in sprint planning itself, there's a certain amount of emergence that can arise just in sprint planning when you talk about what to build, right? The first part of sprint planning, and then the team sort of disperses and goes off. They make a commitment on what to build without really having a discussion internally within the team, the Scrum team, on how to build it, right? And so you're shortchanging the sprint planning process because you haven't really talked about how. That how comes later. It emerges during the sprint, where again that balance is off. It's sort of off kilter a little bit.
Yeah. I think it also kind of applies from a short term to a long term strategy, right? The whole idea of, okay, so let's figure out what we need to do in the next 2 sprints. Let's have a visibility into what we are doing in the next 2 months, and let's have a higher level strategy of what we are doing in the next 2 quarters, right? And that is kind of difficult level of granularity for most people to kind of manage and master, and takes a lot of practice to get there. But at the same time, you have to bring your teams along as well, which makes it even more complicated.
Right. Awesome. So ready to tackle the next topic?
Yeah.
Which is managing technical risk, and we'll start with maybe Chris this time. Product owner role. What is their role in managing technical risks?
Well, if per the Scrum Guide, you want all of your features, all of the work that's to be done on the product in the product backlog, and having that manage, having the technical items in there. Let's talk about, like, for example, technical debt. You want to make sure that you've got all that in there, and then the product owner is the one that's going to help the team go through and figure out, okay, how much of this are we going to do, right? How much of this are we going to take on? And what we typically see is that technical risk goes up if you don't address it, right? So if you're not taking care of that technical debt, all of a sudden those modules that were simple before have now become, they've had 7 developers in there, it's spaghetti code, now nobody wants to touch it because they're afraid they'll break it. And so we want the product owner to be able to help manage that technical risk and evaluate what should we do, how much of this work should we do to make sure that we're keeping the system up to date, right, or the solution up to date, and not make it so that we end up getting behind and then it starts causing us problems from a technical point.
What do you think, Jolly, in terms of technical risk and the role of a product owner?
Right, and just to add to what Chris mentioned, one of the things that I have seen very often is the struggle that the product owners are having in prioritizing technical risk, technical debt into the top of their backlog. Right, they know it's there. The team is very vociferous about it. They are talking to the product owner, hey, this is a big problem, we cannot move forward without fixing it. But they are not able to prioritize that because they are getting hammered from every direction on what is even more important than technical risk, right? So the advice that I have for the product owners there is to understand what it means, right? Most of the time, the team doesn't know what to tell you on why this is important. Right? It is important. Otherwise, the team wouldn't put it in the backlog. They wouldn't be hammering you on it. But they just keep saying, we have to do it. We have to do it. We have to do it. So the team together, not product owner individually or the team separately,
right,
have to figure out how to understand the value that this technical debt item or risk item brings so that I can prioritize it in a conversation with the stakeholders. Because the product owner is the one having that conversation, right? How do I prioritize this? So that's where I see the struggles very often. And I think the product owner educating themselves on the why so that they can create a coherent argument with the stakeholders on, hey, you have a why. There is a why for the technical risk as well. And let's try to prioritize them together. Right?
Right. That's a really good point. Yeah, it's a good point. The product owners really need to understand the impact of that technical risk and the technical debt. And the impact on the delivery, right? Because a lot of times technical debt can impact the speed at which the team can deliver new features, new functions. Because, well, it's like financial debt. The more interest you have to pay, the less money you have to pay. You have to live on, right? So technical debt is sort of the same thing as if you have to work around that debt as a development team. There's less capacity for the team to build new features. One technique that you can use to evaluate the risk in your backlog is what's called finding the rats in your backlog. And the rat is, what is that riskiest assumption, right? That you have in your backlog, the riskiest, that you're testing for your riskiest assumptions in your backlog. And if you can identify where the rats are in your backlog and you prioritize those things, it could be, risk associated with the technical risk, or it could be business risk. It could be different types of risk items, but it's really identifying where's the risk and what can you do to start removing that risk from your backlog, right? And that includes technical debt as well. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that as an idea?
Just as a side note, I mean, I normally tell people that I talk to, the more you get paid, the more you're paid to mitigate risk for the company.
Yeah.
Right? Or the higher up in your organization you are. And that is very true. I mean, you're less in charge of delivery per se, but more in charge of mitigating risk for the organization. So I really like the way you equated risk mitigation and product development. That's a very good analogy.
Awesome. And then I think the final part of this competency, developing and delivering products professionally from Scrum.org's perspective, is optimizing flow, right? And I think for us Agilists, we talk about this quite a bit. How does this relate to the role of a product owner? Go back to maybe to you, Jolly, to start us off.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Kanban and lean principles. And the good thing about the product owner role, or the bad thing about the product owner role, is that they are at the front of the line. They are at the front end of the workflow in almost every workflow that we come up with, right? Whether that be for stories or whether that is for product discovery, they end up at the front of that workflow. And optimizing the input queue is the input valve, so to speak, is the most difficult thing to do, right? And most of the time, the teams are all excited about Kanban, but they have very little excitement about work in progress and how that impacts flow, right? So if the product owner turns on the tap and let it flow, the team is going to lap it up. They're just going to say, "Oh, just bring it on. I will do it. I'm free. I'll do it." But controlling that flow and enabling the members of the team to help each other out, maybe directing traffic a little bit. Hey, I need some help with validating some of these stories. Can you come help me instead of working on the next story?
Yeah.
Or I need some help in discovering this, doing some discovery on the story. I don't understand the technical risk. I don't understand the technical dependency. Come help me with that. And kind of managing traffic. Many times we give that to the Scrum Master, right? I mean, hey, there's a whip. Just go control the whip. But if the product owner kind of jumps in and kind of directs traffic a little bit, I think that would be very useful.
That's a good point. Chris?
They certainly can help optimize the flow by just taking it down to its simplest level, breaking the stories down into smaller stories, right? I mean, making sure your stories aren't 2 weeks in length, but more like a few days one. And then the other thing that they can do to help optimize the flow is, watch for that proverbial cliff that you see in a work breakdown chart, right? Where at the end of the sprint, all of a sudden everything winds up getting done on the last 2 days of the sprint, and start asking, why are we seeing this, and what can we do to make it so that it's not such a big rush at the end, right? I'm available as a product owner to validate your stories when you get them done, validate your work when you get done. We don't have to wait until the end, right? So they have a big influence in that, I believe. And just trying to, again, get it into small enough pieces, and then being there and helping enable the team to get the work done quicker.
Yeah, I think that's a great points both of you brought up, and I especially what resonated with me was something you said, Jolly, and that the spigot, right, that sort of opening up the valve and allowing the stories to just go to the team. I think product owners have a huge role in ensuring that what they do open, that those stories are also ready for the team to work on, that they're refined enough, that the team doesn't spend a whole lot of time in emergence, right? And where it's not balanced between emergence and delivery, where the team can, of course, they have to still discover the work, right? And the architecture will emerge, which is what you want. But at the same time, there's a good balance there where they're also delivering value each and every sprint. And I feel that optimizing the flow for the team starts even before the team gets the stories. It starts much before that, where the product owner is working on really crafting these requirements, and maybe they have their own flow, their own Kanban that leads into the team actually picking up the work. And I know we did a segment maybe a month and a half ago with Mark Grove, where he was talking. We were talking about visualizing the backlog not just within the sprint, but really before the sprint, right? So having a Kanban before the sprint that allows the product owners and all the people that support the product owners, including the Scrum team, to really think about refinement as a Kanban sort of flow-based activity. It's visualized as part of the work, right? So there's work to be done in taking a feature and breaking it down into stories and making sure that there's enough of a level of readiness before the team actually goes into planning and pulls them into their sprint.
Yeah.
So when you have a chance, you should watch that video too. Just look in our YouTube channel and you'll find it.
Yeah, well, a team that I'm working with right now is doing exactly that. They are following the Scrum model for managing their iterative work, but they are having their product discovery and story development and refinement tracked using a Kanban workflow. And it's working really well for them. They, for the kind of the first time, they have visualized what that work is, so the team has a heads up of what to look forward to. Right here, we don't, at least not yet, we don't have the full team looking at it, but the tech lead is looking at what are the stories coming up and how can I make sure that the design kind of emerges along with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've seen that work really well for teams, sort of combining elements of Scrum and Kanban, and it's certainly a really good practice to adopt. Well, any parting thoughts before we sign off?
Maybe you should plug our APO course, Kumar.
Oh, yes. We lost. Oh, here we go. He's coming back. So we just created an Agile Product Owner course. We call it the Product Mindset. And it combines a lot of these things, these elements, right, that you'll learn as part of the course. The role of the product owner, the iterative nature of how a product owner sort of conceives of products. It's not just the product owner alone, but all the stakeholders and the other folks that they work with, and conceiving the product, identifying the why, the reason behind the product, who are the users that are going to be benefiting from it. And understanding their personas and their roles and what is it that they want and need. All that goes into building products that customers really care about, right? Whether it's internal or external customers. And then from there, going through and starting to sort of map out the options, how you might deliver the product. And then it goes into the delivery cycle. And maybe those early iterations of delivery is really about paper prototyping and getting feedback and doing some research, customer-based research, and later iterations of delivery include actually delivering a real product and getting some feedback from it. So all that's going to be available in the course. It's a very experiential course. We are probably, I personally I'm the most proud of this course, our latest course, right? Because it combines elements of design thinking, product management, and product ownership. It's IC Agile certified. I don't want to, certainly, I feel like I'm selling you on it, but I'm just very passionate about the course, and we've done, I think, a really good job creating it.
Yeah, and I think it is a very good example of that emergent development that we talked about earlier, right? We delivered this course. Kumar and Chris spent a lot of time on it, and I have not had teaching any class as much as I had for this. It was a lot of hard work by Kumar and Chris, but just teaching it was so exciting.
Yeah.
But it was also very emergent. We delivered it to a client, and we did the training 2 times. And the amount of revision and changes that we had in iterative fashion really made me believe in Agile all over again, right? Because it was a very well created course.
Yeah, it was a really great experience, and the client could see it too. The way we iterated while delivering, right? So, maybe that's a parting thought for all the product owners that hopefully are watching this, is that I think you mentioned it, right? So as a product owner, you mentioned it, Jolly, maybe in this, either part of this recording or maybe before we got on, product owners getting really wedded to their design, their thinking, right? And ultimately, we're building products for our customers to use, and we live, we thrive on the feedback that we get from our customers. Whether or not our idea of what they want is what they actually want. And so the parting thought is, don't get too wedded to your creation, no matter how proud you are of it. You know, we were humbled by our client, even though the course is great, they loved it. There were still things we learned from it, you know, from the delivery of it, because we learned that some assumptions that we made were incorrect. And so as product owners, that's what you'll be dealing with all the time, learning about your assumptions, which assumptions are true and which just prove to be completely false. And that's okay. That's part of the learning process. That's part of emergence.
Yeah. Amazingly enough, even before we delivered it, we got a ton of feedback. When we talked to IC Agile, when we talked among ourselves, there was so much iterative feedback. It was really a great experience.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Oh, with that, if there's nothing else, we're about 25 minutes, which is what our Agile shorts typically run. Agile mediums.
Mediums, I like.
Thanks for joining us, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye, everyone.